In today's episode of my podcast story, we have Robert Wheeler, a Navy veteran and the founder of Battlefited, a personal development brand dedicated to turning pain into progress with a rich background that includes a decade of military service and 17 years as a federal police officer. Rob has faced his own battles with PTSD and anxiety. Through his journey of transformation, he has become a certified personal trainer, speaker, mindset coach, helping others overcome trauma and build resilience. His podcast, Battle Harder, is known for his raw and honest conversations about healing, leadership, and personal growth. Rob is here to share his inspiring journey on how he built his show from the ground up and how he's empowering others to reclaim their lives. Tell me your name, the name of your podcast, and what your podcast is about.
So my name is Robert Wheeler, but I go by Coach Rob. My podcast is the Battle Harder podcast, and my podcast is about telling stories of mindset, fitness, personal development, and people that have overcome any form of trauma or adversity in their life.
How old is the podcast?
Say that again.
How old is the podcast?
Not very old at all. I would say definitely less than a year. I think I have 32 episodes currently.
Okay. What led to you starting the podcast?
So, just basically everything that I've gone through in my life. I'm a 10-year Navy veteran. I'm a 17-year total police officer between the Navy and being a federal police officer. So when I got out of those jobs, I had PTSD, depression, major depression, anxiety, social anxiety, and I wanted something more out of life. So when I left law enforcement, I actually started my own gym in 2018. And unfortunately, I lost that due to COVID. I lost my whole entire business. Went in a really deep, dark depression, kind of very, very negative, very dark part of my life. And I had to wake up and overcome. And I knew I still wanted to help people because my community was like, we need you. You're a good coach. We resonate with what you say and what you tell us. So I went into personal development and was like, hey, I can reach people all around the world and get to talk to people like you there in Nigeria and speak my message of healing and overcoming trauma through personal development. And so that's why I created the Battle Harder podcast.
Wow. You when you started your podcast, is it audio only or audio and video?
No, it's audio and video. I'm on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then YouTube.
Okay, so on YouTube, is it actual video or just the audio playing on static image?
No, it's the full conversation with me and my guest. It's raw. I don't really do anything in post-production to doctor it up or anything. It's just authentic conversation like we're having right now.
Yeah. How's the YouTube?
Not bad. I started out doing videos of just myself talking about certain issues in the personal development realm, whether it was overcoming adversity or fitness or how to deal with anger issues and stuff. But as soon as I started adding guests, it started providing a lot more value to my community because they were able to identify with the different people that I'm having on the show currently. So I had a neuroscientist on my show. We talked about brain health and how obesity relates to degenerative diseases. I had a guy that actually lost everything and lived out of a backpack for 14 years. I had a veteran who ran an Ironman marathon while having cancer. So just telling real true stories of anything from adversity. That's my favorite. If I can get someone to talk about trauma and things they overcame and how they did it. And then even mental health professionals, doctors that can speak on things that help us beat those problems and issues in our life.
Yeah. When you started your podcast, it came out of a place where you had it in. So it was more like you were scratching your itch. And in an attempt to do that, you also wanted to provide that value to other persons who needed that kind of education, value, and yeah. It's about a year on the podcast now. How would you say, how's the podcast doing regarding that purpose?
I mean, I don't really do any marketing at the moment. I need to because I definitely would like to monetize the podcast. But just alone, I'm in a day's time of posting certain videos, depending on the storyline, I'll get 40, 50 views in a day automatically. So it's doing pretty good in my opinion for just beginning. I have a backlog of currently 30 guests that want to be on the show. So there's definitely a need to tell these people stories and share that with the world and the mental health and personal development communities.
Yeah, quick question. How often do you release episodes?
So right now, because I'm not that popular or that big, I release episodes usually as soon as I record. I do the post editing and upload them. Now, once I get bigger or grow, then I'll probably release episodes every, Tuesday or Thursday is technically when things are seen by the general public as far as being more popular time to post said videos.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that whatever day you happen to record with a guest, once you're done with the editing, you just release. So it's not like, oh, it has to be on Monday or on Tuesday or on Wednesday.
No, not currently now, only because I feel like the more I can release right now, the more content I can put out, the more people will get their eyeballs on it. And then that's important, obviously, for content creation and growth.
Yeah, I mean, of course, posting on a particular day, there's like, oh, the best time. For me, it's more like most of my favorite YouTubers. No, when I mean favorite, not necessarily big YouTubers. Most of my favorite niche YouTubers, I know when they release episodes, so I look forward to those days. So some of them they release episodes on Monday, on Tuesday. So on a Monday, yeah, I usually just go check my subscription and then like, oh, a video has come from Coach Ro. I have to watch this video, and I just start consuming. So it's not really necessarily about best times. It's more about how your favorite show, your favorite series or stuff like that. You expect it. You know when it's coming out, and then you anticipate, you make preparations of how you're going to consume it and listen to it and stuff like that. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just curious about, wow. You produce your podcast yourself, or you have someone helping you with the production?
Man, I do one man show, man. I do everything myself. My business,
Yeah,
coaching, everything. I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to have a team, and it would take a waste. It would give me so much freedom, but no, man,
yeah,
I'm on my own for now. So
yeah. A lot. You're not alone, man. You're not alone. You're not, you're not alone. We're many, very many. So I love for you to like walk us through and give us a behind the curtain view of how the podcast is.
So being, that I'm former military, everything for me, I'm very structured. And if I don't stick by a structure or a routine, like I'll go off the rail sideways. Basically, I set a meeting with my potential guests. We have a Zoom meeting or online meeting for about 15 minutes. I just get to know them a little bit, ask them how I can help them be on my podcast and what they're looking forward to talking to. A lot of times they want to promote maybe a book, or they just overcame something and they're very excited to share that story with the world. So I have a questionnaire that I send them if they're going to be on my show, and it asks questions like, what is the worst thing you've been through in your life, and how did you overcome that, and what is your mindset, or what mindset shift did you have that helped you get over that problem? And basically what that does is when I get that questionnaire back, I create my show notes off of that. So that gives me guidelines of what I'm going to ask them, how I'm going to talk to them. It's still a free flowing conversation, but it just gives me like some key talking points. And then in my opinion, for me, that makes my show go a lot smoother and a lot better. So once I give them those show notes and they say, hey, this looks good, or I want some changes, I book their time, try to make sure I get everything in my calendar so we're not missing appointments and dates. And I use Riverside FM as well, just like
Wow.
you. And so I send them a link and they come to the show and we just do the thing. And then as far as my intros and outros, I add those post-production after the show. So once they're in the show, it's straight to conversation. And then when we're done, once the show airs, I send all my guests a thank you email, and then just give them a call to action like, hey, thanks for being on my show. Could you share this with one person, or could you subscribe to the channel? And that just gives them a little push to want to share their episode with, their friends, their family, or the group of people that they surround themselves with.
So what do you use for editing the episode?
I edit everything right in Riverside. So, I mean, Riverside is a pretty good tool. I pay for the mid-tier, I guess, version of it. And then what I like about Riverside is I use it for the magic clips. There's another company I don't know if you've heard of, called Opus Clips, where you can make clips as well.
Yeah.
But I just make my clips in Riverside, and then that's what I push out to like my Instagram and my Facebook and all my social media platforms and stuff, because I can put the captions on there and then write my little post about, why they should watch this episode. So right in Riverside is where I completely do everything.
Okay. It seems the process is quite simple and straight to the point. And yeah, it makes sense to
I
Zoom and
definitely, yeah, I don't like complicated things. I like try to keep everything as simple as possible.
yeah, yeah. Well, how much would you say you spend on the production of the podcast from start to finish every month or every year? I don't know. Depending on the number
Uh,
that's available for you.
Um, I guess it depends solely on the length of the episode. I mean, if there's no parts I have to cut due to like either a person maybe knocking over their camera or maybe they cough or something, which very rarely happens. Honestly, it maybe takes me an hour at best to edit an episode and then another maybe 20-30 minutes to push it out to like Spotify, because I have the RSS feed. So whatever I share to Spotify for creators, that carries it to iHeartRadio, that carries it to Apple Podcasts. Then I just have to go into YouTube Studio. And, once you have your description, what I like to do, and this is a good tip for your listeners that maybe want to create a podcast, when I create my show notes, that's what I use for my description. So my description is already ready for YouTube. I just cut and paste that into YouTube. And then right there, I can drop the links of my guests, whatever they want to share, whether they want to share their book link or their Facebook link, and boom, it's done because I already have the segment built out as podcast in YouTube. So I'm always sharing to the same podcast portion in my YouTube channel.
Oh, oh. Okay. I like the process. I love the process. So how do you get the answer about?
Say that. How do I get guests for my podcast? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Primarily, I didn't even know this existed till recently. I found the app Podmatch, and that's where most of my guests, they just message me, and I have a pre-made message that says, "Hey, thanks." If I look at their bio or I think they might be a good fit because they do have to fit my niche, so to speak, I send them the quick little message says like, "Hey, thanks for reaching out. Book a call with me," and then it just goes from there. They book the call with me, and like I said, I get to know them a little bit and see if they're a good fit, and then after that, it's pretty much done. So
So far that you've been booking a call with guests, have you ever had a time where you had to like say, oh, nah, after the pre-interview, you just realized that the guest wasn't the right fit for you?
not yet, but I did do an interview with an older lady the other day, and I was just trying to like, she just didn't have the energy. It's not that the podcast was horrible, but I like people to try to match my energy when I'm talking to them. And she dealt with like eating disorders and other issues, and I kept trying to like get to the reason why she had these issues and how she really overcame them. And she wanted to focus more on, I guess, her coaching and how she coaches her clients, which is fine. But after I did that episode, I was like, man, am I going to release this episode or not? And I probably am, because I did take her time as a guest. But that just shows me that because I am inexperienced, I'll probably focus a lot more on the vesting of my guests and how I bring them into my show and if I actually will use them or not. And I do think that, we will, or like you said, I probably will encounter sometimes where I may have to say like, this isn't going to work. And that just comes with being professional, I think, and sending them a very professional message of why I'm not going to use them and why they're not going to fit in my show demographic.
Yeah, but I think isn't that the reason for the pre-interview, to get to like be on, to align with the guest and to be on the same page with the host and the
I definitely agree with that, but I do think sometimes like everything could seem like great, and then whether it's like stage fright or maybe they haven't, because I'm kind of taking everybody. I don't care on your following. Once again, you just have to fit my niche. So I have some people that may have never been on a podcast before, and that might be like a scary thing for them. So I think, yes, you can see in the pre-interview kind of, and if you ask the right questions, but sometimes things change once they get in front of the camera or over audio. So
yeah. I mean, for me, sometimes I feel like it's a thing of habit. Like if you've been if you've been guesting on podcasts for, and they basically been asking you the same questions again and again and again. Sometimes when people ask you different stuff, different, you just realize that you end up saying this same answer to those to the previous questions you had on other and they without even realizing that sometimes the host just knows that like, this is not what I
Hmm.
this is, and it's not like okay, this is one question. It happens the first time, the second time, the third, and you're like, is it that I'm not communicating, or is it the questions I'm asking are not making sense? Because I'm asking one thing, and then this is the other thing you're answering. It's not even close. Yeah. Well, you're like, okay, it's all right. I guess we'll have to publish it or do. But I feel as much as possible, it's how do I explain this? People, um, being a podcast host and a podcast guest kinds of give you a perspective to see both ways that, okay, because I think if being a podcast host makes you a good podcast guest, like not all the time, but most of the time, because now
Yeah.
if you're having a conversation with the host, you understand, okay, what the host is trying to do. So you're not just trying to say, okay, I have to see this because you've been there where you're like, no. If I start talking like this, the host is going to feel this way, but he's not going to want to express it so that he doesn't look
So
yeah.
I don't know how you feel about this, but I actually prefer being a guest than being a host. But the thing is, for me, like I'm always my authentic self. So however I host is also how I guest. So I don't ever change my persona or perspective, no matter who I'm talking to. So I definitely prefer to be a guest than a host. A lot less work.
Yeah, of course. A lot less work. But okay. I guess what I mean is that I'll give an example. If let's say you were invited to come a show that's for kids, right? I mean,
Mm,
you're not gonna the way you're going to talk on that show. You're not gonna talk the way we're having a conversation, right?
right,
So it's
right.
gonna be a
But
way different. But it's not like you are pretending or being not being yourself. But it's just that the audience you're speaking to is different.
But I think that also comes with, like, you have to be very selective of what you do. Like, you were talking about niches. You have to stay in your niche. Obviously, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to be on a kids show talking to kids unless it's talking about how to make them better. And then obviously, as a father, I have 3 kids. I can relate some things to kids, but yes, my tone's gonna be different, my inflection might be different, definitely. You do have to adapt to certain shows, so you're right on that part.
Yeah. I mean, the ultimate goal is we understand who we're trying to, like, who the audience of the show or the podcast is, so that when we speak, we're able to like use metaphors, analogies, and such that the
Mm.
people they get the message. Because I mean, why are we going to a podcast if we do? It's not because we want to promote our. I mean, promoting our stuff is good. Ultimately, we want to give value to people so that they trust us and say, okay, yeah, I'd love to work with this gentleman. I would love to see what he's all about. I love to check out his stuff. And then the relationship starts out there.
So, let me ask you a question. Have you found it hard sometimes to understand us Americans or different people due to different cultures or ideologies?
Mm, on the language part, nah, I understand perfectly. But ideologies, not really. Not really. No. I've never had that issue. But I do have that sometimes when I talk, sometimes my guests, I have to like repeat myself, which is I'm totally fine with. Yeah, other than that, conversation goes pretty.
Because I've been doing a couple podcasts with people, the hosts are over in India, and they're very big on the health and wellness and mindset and personal development, the stuff I do. But sometimes it is hard to understand and hear what they're saying. And I mean, I have to ask sometimes for them to repeat themselves. And I feel bad because I hope like I'm not messing up their show. And I'm like, can you repeat that? So sometimes there is a communication barrier, but I also appreciate how the fact you're in Nigeria, I'm in Florida, and we're communicating. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, uh, it could be either that or you end up just rambling and saying whatever you think you heard. I which I would prefer the guest tells me, please, can you repeat that again? And then I repeat rather than you just answering whatever you think you heard me.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't do that. I think that's just kind of disrespectful. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's understand the, yeah, it's on, you. you've been doing this for a year. Before that, were you guesting on podcast, or you started guesting when you became a host?
I just recently started guesting, I would say within this month. As because I'm more prevalent on social media, like Instagram is my biggest platform. I just recently started TikTok not too long ago, been on Facebook since the beginning. But I realized as a coach and as a person that's trying to help people, I need to network and be in front of as many people as possible. So now the gloves are off, so to speak, and I'll do whatever podcast I think is beneficial and can help my persona and my public. So uh, this is like the first month I've been actually hosting, and I've already done 6 podcasts, I think, including yours now. So
Wow, wow, okay. Yeah, I mean, Podmatch makes it really easy to connect
yeah, definitely,
with guests and hosts, and and the platform is just. I've tried other platforms. Podmatch is just it's different.
definitely. I
Yeah,
like it a lot. I wish I would have known about it sooner when I first started my podcast, but hey, now that I'm using it, it is what it is, and it works really
yeah,
good. So
yeah. Now that you've been podcasting for a year now, thank God you're in the self improvement niche. So the question I'm going to ask will make sense. I believe that the things they work on us. So if you're in business, if you're doing business, as much as you're like, oh, I want to do business, I want to grow on the business is also working on you. It's also making some changes on you too. So it's certain things you discover and find out about yourself, like, oh, I didn't know this thing. Now that I've been doing business for 2 years, I just discovered this stuff. Wow, that's nice. So on the podcasting aspect, what are some things you've noticed, kind of like noticed or discovered or realized just because of the podcast for the past, okay, about a year now?
well, the biggest that's a great question, and the biggest thing is it's almost like therapy to me. So, like I told you, I have mental health issues, but I don't struggle with them anymore. And part of that is because of the work I do and what I do for work as a coach. But every time I get to tell somebody's story and I find out, like I said, a guy had cancer and he's running triathlons while having cancer, or a woman that was in an abusive relationship and she almost died and she got out of the relationship, you start to realize that your life's not that bad, right? And that's gratitude. And then you start practicing that gratitude and you feel better. So when I tell these stories, or even when I coach people, it's almost therapeutic for me. It's almost a therapy for me. It helps me from going back into a very negative, depressive, dark place. So I like podcasting because we go back to like, and I tell everybody this, if we go back to ancient times, all we could do is tell stories, right? Go
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
like, and storytelling was very important. And storytelling is what started to build our culture across the world. We get to tell these stories on a grander scale to everybody and anybody. And literally anybody can click in and listen to what you're saying. And whether they like it or not, they can either identify with that, they can argue with you. It sparks a bigger conversation. And the platform can be used for good and evil. But I believe that there's more good than evil out there. So I get to tell these stories and just spread goodwill. So it's a pretty amazing thing doing the podcast.
Well, I mean, the thing when we look around, even the movie, all other forms of media, they just happen to like package it and kind of like, refine it, but it's story at
Mhm.
its core. And that's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, people with AI, the thing with podcasting, and I feel privileged to be um, in this industry and happen to be taking it seriously because with AI and everything that's happening and the way people can just generate, of course, generating all the stuff, it has the advantage and it's people would always want stories. People would always want two guys just sitting down, having a conversations and just talking
Mhm.
and chatting. People will always want
Mhm.
that. Podcasting is that thing that would give, and yeah, of course, having a video or an episode where, yeah, 5 tips to change your, and like, first, number one, you got to do this, number two, you got to do this. Yeah, of course, that has its significance, but people want stories. The thing about stories is that we don't forget stories easily. Like all the stories I've ever heard, whether in church, whether in school, whether in conversation with my friends, I can remember all of them. But probably people's names, nah, I can't remember them. Names of this, I can't remember. But once you start telling the story, I'm like, yeah, I remember. Yeah, that it was my teacher that shared that story the first time. Oh, I remember that story. Yeah, it sticks with me. And sometimes
Mhm.
when I'm about to make decisions, about to take some steps, I remember that story. I'm like, yeah, that guy that did that stuff, that cried wolf. yeah, I shouldn't be crying wolf, so that the days that I need help, people are not going to say, oh, that's how he always does things. He's not really.
I think that and the authenticity. People want authentic, real, like you said with AI. AI has some good points and some bad points, but with me and you talking, this is real. There's nothing fake. It's raw, it's real, and that's a beautiful thing, and people gravitate towards that. They want connections.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're pretty active on YouTube, and you've been doing the podcast now. And when will the podcast officially complete?
I'd have to I'd have to look at my YouTube, but probably let's see. It's probably going to be soon. I mean, probably in the next couple months, I would say that I'll be at exactly 1 year. So
I'm exactly interested in that date because I love to come for the after.
That'd be an amazing thing, man.
Yeah,
That's all we want, right? Is the after party.
But I need the date.
No worries. I'll get them to you. I promise.
Okay. So that tell me that. Oh, yeah, I forgot. It was last 2 months. Oh, my bad.
No, man. I'm a man of my word, man. I promise.
Okay. Like a lot of podcasters, first month into podcasting, they have 90 episodes, they are 10 episodes, they quit, they stop. Like this is not just one, like it's the general statistics. Because on podcast is quite different from every other form of. There is no validation, no numbers, none of those things. It's depth. And that's why people do podcast guesting, because as much as you might go on a podcast that has maybe 50, 60 lists, the depth is different. And so the trust and the conversion is just different from probably a YouTube video that gets a 1,000, 100,000.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that completely.
Yeah. What are the growth strategies you've kind of like really leveraged on? Because there are so many tips and statistics that are flying out everywhere that, you have to do this, you have to do this. But I'm curious, what has really helped grow your podcast?
Well, I think, like you just briefly said, you can't give up, right? You got to keep going at it. You got to keep going at it. And I would say for someone that wants to do podcasting, and a lot of people, when we start something or we want to start something, we really like go crazy over the details, right? Like if I want to start a business or a podcast, I got to get this best mic and I got to get this camera and I got to just start. Even if it's just from your cell phone and you're talking into it, just start. It's the same thing with social media, any kind of content creation. It's just post, be consistent. If you don't know what you're doing, do it. Fake it till you make it, and keep going. And then you'll realize, because even if I go all the way back to like my very first Instagram video, and I think I have like over 2,000 Instagram posts, I would know that the first video was probably the most horrible thing I ever said or did. But now there's structure, now there's guidelines, now it fits a format, and you just get better over time. So you have to keep going, and you have to do what you love. So I would say whatever you want to podcast about, make sure it's something that you actually want to talk about. Like just don't start a random podcast and say, oh, I'm going to talk about dinosaurs, but you don't know nothing about dinosaurs. Like make sure it's something you love and then stick with that. And then over time, it's going to grow. So
yeah, the strange thing about consistency is that most people don't understand that consistency is not about if you are consistent, something will magically happen. It's just that if you're expecting people to show up for you, you have to show up. It's just like a provision store that's it's at the street. You're not open, right? You're not always open, and you're like, oh, there are no customers. Customers are not. And hey, just a quick break. If you enjoying the insights so far and want even more behind the scenes ideas, inspiration, and tools for growing your own podcast, join my email list at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. You get access to helpful resources, exclusive updates, and the kind of stuff I only share with my email subscribers. Whether you're starting out or already podcasting, there's something valuable waiting for you. Head over to mypodcaststory.com/join and subscribe. Now, back to the episode. People have to, because a lot of persons are passing through the street. They have to say, okay, yeah, this shop is always open. Yeah, if I go there, I'm going to see stuff. And so that the day they eventually decide to come around, you're there. So you have to like show up before you even start asking or demanding for people to show up for you, or expecting that your audience should find you. You are not even showing up, yet you're expecting people to be there for you. Like, you have to be there for yourself first.
Yeah, there's a saying that's something similar like that. I think it's like, you have to show up for yourself before you can show up for anyone else, or before anyone else can show up for you. So you have to be able to handle these things by yourself first. And regardless of how many likes or clicks or people are watching, if you believe in it, then you know you can achieve it if you just keep going, keep going. And I tell a lot of people on my podcast all the time when we're talking about personal development, Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, one of the most relentless, hardest working people. He would literally get to the gym before everybody and shoot hoops. He would either literally stay before everybody left after a game and shoot hoops. And that's that consistency. And that's actually what I teach in my personal development. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline, and discipline equals consistency, and consistency equals progress, and progress equals results, right? So everything you said is right on the mark, my man.
Yeah, yeah. And the strange thing about showing up consistently is that within a short while, you start seeing yourself as that thing. Let's say you're a podcaster. If you start podcasting consistently for week after week, after by month, 3 months, you all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm a podcaster. When you're having conversations, say, yeah, I'm a pod. That identity shift is really, because it's really powerful, because a lot of persons, they are podcasting, but they've not started seeing them as a podcaster, probably because they've not started doing the things that podcasters would do, or showing up. Probably they post 1 month, and then 2 months, 3 months after, they're like, okay, I should post now. And and you say fake it until you make it. But I believe that it's asking yourself that, oh, if I was an actual professional in this field, what would I do? And it's just like, if I wanted to be a writer, I would ask myself, okay, I need to, and then you start writing. So the goal is not necessarily to be, oh, the best-selling writer. Of course, that's nice, that's awesome. But the goal is, okay, I want to be a writer. That's the identity. Let's focus on the now first before we talk about adding adjectives like, oh, is it number one ranked podcaster? Is a top charting podcaster? Let's secure the podcasts first before we start looking for the adjectives we want to.
You're right. A lot of people try to project too much into the future of what they believe in and what they want, and we have to live in the present, right? Tomorrow hasn't happened yet, so why are you going to worry about tomorrow? Worry about today and what you can do right now. So if you can start podcasting right now and you want to, start that. And I like what you said about that, about having the identity of a podcaster. I'm Coach Rob. Everybody where I live knows me as Coach Rob. That's my identity. That's my persona. The Rock is the Rock. I'm Coach Rob. So, once you adopt that identity, whether it's a podcaster, a writer, a coach, you have to live in that, and you have to sit in that, and you have to stay in that. And even when I was in the gym today, I was talking to one of my gym buddies, a guy I kind of mentor, and he's like, you'll always be Coach Rob. And it's just the persona that I put out into the universe. And so if you're a podcaster, you put that out into the universe, and people say, what do you do? I'm a podcaster.
Yeah, I'm a podcaster. For the past 1 year you've been podcasting, have you ever gotten a fan mail or a message from your list?
Just my buddies, man. my friends. I have a good support system, and my friends will comment on my podcast to kind of give me that boost. I did. So my first guest I had on the show, he lives over in the UK. He's he's written 19 books. So an author of published 19 books. His last book was about fitness and mindset. And he actually reached out to me. This was before Podmatch. This is before I knew anything about trying to have guests. And so this was like how Battle Harder was born, as far as having guests and telling their stories. And he didn't even know about Podmatch. And so I emailed him a thank you letter a few days ago. And I was like, hey, I really appreciate you being on my show. This was the catalyst. You lit a fire in me, and you started something. And he wrote back, he's like, man, the words you said, I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing Podmatch with me. I definitely love to be back on your show again. And even to the point where he's a published author, and after our podcast, because as a coach, I'm trying to write my own books for personal development. He's like, you want to help get published? I'll help you. So I think podcasting can help you reach other goals and other opportunities just from the people that we network with and we talk to.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that kind of like relationship that podcasting helped you build. Are there other instances, you could share with us? I mean, your podcast is pretty, but one a lot can happen in a
Well, I mean, I consider myself a rookie right now, man. Probably more of an expert than me, so I got a lot. I'm learning. I'm learning as I go. But I'll tell anybody, regardless of what we want to do in life, you have to put in the reps. If you're in the gym and you want to get muscle, you have to put in the reps. If you want to do a podcast and you want people to see you, you got to put in the reps. If you want to be an auto mechanic, you got to learn to work on engines. You got to put on the reps. You can't half-ass anything, right? You have to go all in, and you have to be 1% better each and every day, and that's how you scale up to go to where you want to go.
Yeah. Now that you've been podcasting and you've been doing this now for close to a year, how would you say the podcast is powerful? Now, I'm not. This question is not just about the number. In terms of the goals and you had when you started the podcast. How would you say the podcast is it doing way better than you expected? Or how is it?
It's actually, in my opinion, it's amazing. It's gone above and beyond because I never would thought in a million years that, and I have a pretty strong belief system, but I never thought in a million years so many guests would want to be on my show. And it was so overwhelming and overflowing to the point that I was taking guest meetings Monday through Friday, and I was just talking to way too many people. And I was like, man, I can't schedule all these people. I can't book all these people. So I literally had to change my schedule to only take podcast meetings on Monday and Wednesday. And then I was like, well, I'm only going to record one episode on Tuesday and one episode on Thursday. I'm recording 3-4 episodes on Tuesday and 3-4 episodes on Thursday. So it went exponentially bigger than what I could ever thought. And it's just helping solidify me as a coach. It's helping me in my business. It's helping me reach those people that want what I offer them as far as healing from military, law enforcement mindset. It, like you said, it's definitely not about the numbers. Once again, I'm a storyteller. I'm telling these people stories. People are getting to vent. They're getting to share whatever they want to share on my podcast. And it's just showing that in life, there's other options for dealing with problems, issues, and obstacles that we have in our life.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For a moment, you kind of froze, so I wasn't sure if you were still talking or you were done. Okay. Your podcast connects to your business.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how would you say your podcast is doing in terms of money aspect? Let's talk about them.
Technically, from the podcast, there is no money, but what it does do is it has been a huge networking opportunity for me. Because of this podcast, I'm speaking at a behavioral health conference here in Florida where I live, giving a workshop on using personal development to overcome trauma. I'm one of the only non-clinicians. This is a mental health conference, and here I am, a guy I'm just a personal development coach. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. And I was invited to speak at this place. There is a university, because of this podcast, that's looking at me to help them develop a veteran community for health and fitness at their university. And obviously, these things can all lead to making money and getting paid. And then people hear how I speak to my guests and talk to them. And we talk about overcoming trauma and pain. And then that gives me coaching clients, people that want to work with me and wants me to help them overcome their issues. So while I'm not making money on the podcast, there's definitely money being made on the other end. I also have apparel line. Battle Fitted has its own clothing line. So people see me in the gym. They want to wear what Coach Rob is wearing. They buy my clothes. So I always tell people and I'm by no means rich. I'm a disabled veteran. I get disability for being a veteran. There's other things that I do to make money. But I always tell people, if you want to be rich, you have to have multiple revenue streams of income, right? So the podcast, keynote speaking, coaching, my apparel, it all goes hand in hand. And then books that I'm writing and materials that I'm putting out for mental health practitioners to use for their clients. So the podcast is a big, huge, that's kind of like the heart, I would say, of that. And then the veins are everything that goes out. So eventually when it all comes together, because once again, I'm a baby in the podcasting realm, it's going to be a beautiful thing. And I think it's going to provide me an abundance of wealth. So
Yeah, I'd love for us to step back a bit. And can you remember the first speaking gig you got from someone listening to your podcast or someone coming on your podcast where you can expressly say, oh, the person that put in word for me for this speaking knew me from my podcast?
So the first one actually will be this month. Will be at the Behavioral Health Conference. I have spoke before at my college and at veteran events and certain other events, but that hasn't come from the podcasting. That's come from my social media presence or me just being a coach or being asked from a friend or someone, hey, can you come speak to this group of people? So this will be my first actual one from the podcast.
Yeah, I'd love for you to like share the details on how you kind of met the connect that's
So for instance, like, and I'll share like the most previous, one of my last episodes, like I said, I had a veteran, and this veteran of the healthcare system for veterans in the United States is very poor. So this veteran actually lobbied to get us better healthcare. And then I told his entire story, which took about an hour, was one of my longest podcasts. And then I just felt so honored to hear his story that trying to promote it and like get as much ears on as possible. And he was the guy, he's like, hey, I have a family member that works at the university, and we really need to put a veteran program together for health and fitness and mindset. I think you'd be the perfect candidate. Can I reach out to her to see if you'd want to do this? And so he sent me some materials to look at and stuff. And I was like, of course, I'd be honored to do this. This is something that has never been done, something I'm setting up, something that I'm originally creating at this university, which not only helps veterans, and that's my whole main mission, is to help people and heal people, but it hasn't been done yet, what I'm trying to do. So this is allowing me to change the game as a coach. Most people, I don't like the term life coach. So most people are life coaches, and I'm a personal development coach. I'm not a life coach. I help you based on your trauma, your fitness, your mindset, and then I help you create healthy habits and discipline to get over that trauma. And because of this podcast, it's given me a reach, even with my guests. When I interview some of the people that want to be guests on my show, when we're done talking, they're like, oh my God, you're going to change the world. And to hear that from a stranger, like, that's an amazing, beautiful thing. That gives you the courage, that gives you the intention, that gives you the universal power, God, or whatever, will to say, okay, you're on the right path and this is what you need to be doing with your life. So, and that's all from podcasting.
Oh, oh, wow. I'm glad that you 1 year into the podcast, you started making these connections. You said getting some of those benefits. I mean, if podcasting is a game that if you can always find a way to always win. Like you can always find a way to design it such that you are always winning by just doing it. Right? For me, my goal is, okay, let me meet interesting persons and have conversations with them. That's my goal. Now, if I get millions of downloads, that's awesome. That's wonderful. But that's not the thing. Now, by just showing up and having conversation with you, I get my benefits. I get my goal. And so I don't have to like, oh, well, I get a million. Of course, I'm working on growing my podcast. I'm doing things to grow the podcast, but that's not the benefits. That's not the goal. That's not my reward. My reward is inherent. It happens now. The moment I have a conversation with a guest, uh, it's amazing. I've met people from different countries, amazing stories, and different people that are working on different things. That for me, it's rewarding. And for other people, it could be, okay, every episode I'm going to practice my public speaking, become better on speaking. And so every episode you do, by the time you go back, you say, oh yeah, I'm becoming better. That's a reward. Now, of course, getting views and download, that's nice. That's wonderful. I'm not going to say, oh, that's knowing that people are listening to your stuff and a lot of persons are consuming the content you put out there. That doesn't have to be the primary stuff. I mean, it's your show. You get to choose what matters. You get to choose the metrics that matters, and you get to prioritize things like you call the show.
And you're speaking an awesome truth, because that's the thing, right? When we do things from our heart and we don't expect any monetary gain or benefit. We don't say, hey, because I do this, I should get this or I should deserve this.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. Everything that I do is because when I leave this earth, I want to leave my legacy and I want people to know me as Coach Rob, the guy that tried to help the world and heal the world and tell these stories. And if I get rewarded for that, great. And if not, that's not a big deal either, because I tell you what, man, the inner peace that I have in my life that I didn't have when I had the depression and anxiety, it's a beautiful, amazing thing. And that it means more as far as us to be happy when we speak from the heart and internally than expect things. And so you just hit the nail in the coffin, man. That was a beautiful point.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we feel the same way on this subject. Well, do you have any projections for the podcast? Some of some kind of like projects or things you're working on, or maybe episodes you're trying to experiment. I'd love to hear some of your ideas or things that you're thinking about or working behind it.
Yeah, I guess the hardest thing is because I want to stay in my niche, but I want to be able to have people that maybe fit in the niche, but they could go out of bounds a little bit. So, for instance, I'm looking at interviewing a guy who he developed AI to help us with stress and depression and things. It's not really in my wheelhouse or in my knowledge base because I want to talk about people overcoming trauma or mental health issues, but it is also somewhat in the same subject matter. So interviewing him could go in either direction, but it could give maybe someone doesn't want to talk to a therapist. Maybe someone doesn't want to talk to a coach. They want to talk to a computer or an inanimate object to kind of hide their pain from the world. And if it helps them heal, then more power to them. So experimenting in different realms of leaders. I have a lot of people reach out to me that's like, I want to be on your podcast. And I ask them, well, what have you overcome? And they tell me they're great at doing business and being a business leader. That's not really what I talk about. So I have to determine, do I really want to have them on the show or to tell them, hey, sorry, like this isn't the right fit. So I am trying to experiment with, I guess, different forms of guests and how they can relate into the subject matter. My main thing is it has to relate to my niche and my subject matter because that's my passion and that's what I'm about.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal is to grow the podcast to a level that your own listeners get to pitch you to come on the show. That way, they already know they already know the kind of thing you do. So you're not even trying to convince them and tell them that, oh, my show is this. They're like, dude, I've listened to your show. It's also awesome. I recently I've gone through this. I would love to share the story with you. Like they already know what the show is all about. And then for guests, I mean that's kind of like the process you have to like deal with for now. But when you get to the level where people are your listeners, they want to come on the show, they want to share their story. That way, it's easier. And then when you have a lot of pitches, it's easier to select and just weed out. And I think ultimately what I've been thinking of recently is probably there'll be like a small form where people can I'll ask relevant questions. They can fill the form, and depending on the questions they filled, I get to decide if they are a relevant fit. And if they're a relevant fit, I send them a link to book a meeting. But if not, I just send them that, oh, I'm so sorry. But at the point in time, based on the goal and everything, I send, that polite message that basically tells them no. But you have to like give some sweet explanation so that you don't hurt their feelings. Yeah.
I like that. And that's similar to what I do. I just do it in the reverse. I send them the link first. That's what I like about Podmatch. Now, I have been getting emails from like assistants and other people that says, oh, you need, and I'll give you an example. So a lady wanted to be on my show, her assistant reached out. So I sent her the questionnaire and she gave me like one word sentences. So there was really no substance or meat to the questions. So now I'm going to have to tell her assistant, like, look, I don't know if she's going to be a good fit because she didn't really answer my questions and I have to have something to talk about.
Yeah, to work with.
And so I like what you're thinking with that. And that's essentially what I do. I send them a form after the meeting. And if the questions are answered, with at least some sort of depth, it doesn't have to be a story, but at least a paragraph saying, hey, this is the answer. Like put some thought into it, because if you just half-ass my questions, do you really want to be on my show? Or are you just trying to promote your thing? Like, so I like your form thought. That's a pretty good idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's a one-man show. it's an indie podcast. We as much as we can save time, we're always looking to do those things because I wouldn't want to get on a pre-interview with someone if there's a way I can just like pre-select and know if that
Right,
person is right. Because so that the pre-interview will just be let's all get on focus and kind of exchange ideas on how we can better help my list, which I already know that you can help my listener instead of to determine if you are a good fit for the podcast. Because I mean, we're going to spend 15 minutes. That's a lot of time. And the thing about guesting, about meeting is that you will look at that 15 minutes, but there's a lot of other little time that will come into that 50, will add to that 15 minutes. Like there are times where you reach out to the guest. There are times when your preparations you make for the meeting, and then you have to block about maybe 20 to 30 minutes of your car on the time, and probably the guest is going to reschedule, and then you're like, oh, the guest rescheduled because of unforeseeable circumstances, and you're like, I booked that 30 minutes for this stuff before, and you end up before you know the time is past that because now you're not in that frame of mind for because you're like, oh, I wanted to inter and stuff like that. So for me, as much as possible, I don't want to, if I can select and without people, I just do that so that when I'm having conversation with people, because my time is precious. And yeah, I'm having conversation with someone, I know that that person is a perfect fit. And if we are not supposed to be having that conversation, we should not be having a conversation in the first.
definitely. Yeah, no, you hit it. You said it right again. Time, your time, my time, our time is precious. We don't want to waste it. Especially when we have processes like you said. I don't know about you, but I just found out recently, if I don't use the Riverside app, not the program, every time I go into Riverside before hosting a guest, Riverside has constantly crashed on me. And so that takes time right there when you're trying to bring a guest in the studio, technical difficulties, or, what happens if my mic goes out? What am I going to do? Like, so you definitely don't want to waste time on a bad guest or waste time trying to get a guest into your podcast if it's not going to work, especially like you said, time blocking is so important, especially if you have a family or maybe you're doing this as a side hustle. Like you can't be wasting time on not having the right people on your show. So I feel you on that 100%.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good thing you mentioned Riverside, and I'm using the app right now on my mobile phone, and yeah, the stuff works. Works. I struggled with that same issue on the browser for some reason. Sometimes it just looks as if everything just disappeared. And
Yeah,
what's going?
happens here in the U.S. too, brother.
Yeah, I still don't understand why most of my guests they don't seem to complain that Riverside kind of like disappears on. But for me, the host, sometimes I struggle. I don't understand how that platform works. I'm learning every
Yeah,
day,
me
Sha.
neither.
Yeah, hopefully, maybe when I'm 2 years, 3 years into this thing, I would, I'll say I'll know the ropes around.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute delight chatting.
No problem, man. This was cool, man. I've never spoke to someone actually in Nigeria before, so I enjoyed it too, man.
Okay,
That's cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And like, dude, you're a good host, man. I appreciate it.
I get to be the first Nigerian podcaster you spoke to. That's
You're not a Nigerian prince, are you?
ah,
You're not gonna
wow.
message me and ask me for my credit card details.
Yeah. See, right now I need about $500. My kingdom has been seized. If you can help me with 500, I'll send you 10. Before I forget, where can listeners learn more about you and the amazing things?
So the best place to find everything about Coach Rob is my website, which is battlefittedbrand.com. There they can find what I do. I have a blog there. They can shop my merch. They can go to all my socials, podcast. Everything is from that website, battlefittedbrand.com.
Well, once again, thank you for coming on the podcast. And once the episode goes live, I'll be happy to share it with you.
Sounds good. I appreciate that. And I will give you those dates through email of when my official year
is. Please do.
For the podcast.
Yeah, so that I can add it to my calendar that so date is Coach Rob's podcast birthday, so that I remember to say, okay, happy podcast anniversary, because it's not easy. It's not.
It's definitely not. But I appreciate you, brother. This was a good time. You enjoy your day there in Nigeria, my friend.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I am Wisdom Okonkwo, and I hope this conversation sparked new ideas and gave you a deeper look into the heart of podcasting. If you've loved this episode, consider supporting the show by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/wisdomhq. Every bit helps keep the stories going. And hey, don't forget to follow, rate, and share this podcast with another podcaster or creator who would find it helpful. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.